Hi, I'm Carla Jewell, and you're watching Visions for a Child's Heart.
Rachel's weeping for her children. Rachel's weeping. Somehow someone's got to save them. Save the children. And if you say that love's the answer, why don't we begin? Or will we just end?
Make sure my pant leg's not up.
Check the camera. Okay. Ready in 5, 4, 3.
Hi, this is Miss Evelyn, and welcome to Visions for a Child's Heart. This is a very exciting and special month for me because it's November, it's National Adoption Month. And in our work with foster and adoptive children, there are a few things that happen during National Adoption Month. One is an opportunity for families to come together to finalize the adoption of the children that they have brought into their homes. And nationwide, there are ceremonies taking place during this month. The other aspect of National Adoption Month is informing and raising the awareness to our communities about what the impact of adoption is on our communities and our families. And oftentimes, adoption carries a negative connotation when we talk about the birth parent. And people use terms like give up a child for adoption. And that's not necessarily the case. And the other part of adoption that a child is being able to be adopted is when they go through the foster care system. So most of our work in our talking here on this program has been about children who've gone through the foster care system, but you had an opportunity to meet one adoptee who was adopted as an infant. But today I'm very pleased to be able to have a birth parent who is here to share her story of placing her child for adoption, and you'll get to hear about her journey. So today we welcome Ms. Mary Flotho.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, because I'm sure that you haven't really shared the story with many people.
No, I haven't.
Okay. So I want you to just relax. Don't be
Okay.
nervous, because I believe that someone is going to see this, and it's going to be probably healing for them, because a lot of women who have placed children for adoption haven't shared it with anyone. And it's something they may desire. And I think sometimes people walk around with a certain fear. But I think it'll also be healing for some of the adoptees as well. So let's just go in and share the circumstances of your decision to place for adoption.
Well, in 1962, I became pregnant, and while I was in college, and the circumstances really were that at that time, my father was a congregational minister in a town not very far away from my college, and I was actually in fear that they would find out that I was pregnant. This was before the days of of legal abortion. This is before the days of there was a lot of shame in becoming pregnant at that time.
Unmarried.
Unmarried. I was a junior in college, and what I did was I went to a Salvation Army home and kept the whole thing secret from my family and even most of my friends. And they referred me to the
Adoption agency?
I'm sorry, I can't remember. The social worker in Onondaga County, where I was living at the time, they referred me, and they advised me to give up the child for adoption. And really, the thoughts in mine were that I didn't have any choice. I had no means of supporting the child. I was in school. I had to drop out of school, and and there was just really, I didn't know there was really any other way. If I was going to have the baby, then I would give the baby up for adoption. And I didn't have a lot of counseling. I didn't, people didn't, you just didn't share your story with anybody, really. The only person in my family that knew where I was even was my brother. And he, he didn't have any advice for me particularly either, other than, yes, you need to give the baby up for adoption. So it wasn't really under a duress, but it was under a circumstance that I had no other, I couldn't go back to my family. I couldn't go back to my town. I didn't think I could, if I was to raise a baby, I didn't know how to support it,
Did you know that anyone who had given birth to a child as a single parent in your community?
There was, actually I had one girlfriend, but she was pregnant, like, 2 months difference.
Oh, from you?
From me.
Wow.
And so we had no idea,
that
we really
each
didn't
other
know.
were pregnant.
Well, we found out later,
Okay.
and we just really, I just left and went to the Salvation Army home, and which actually I thank God for that Salvation Army home, because that was available at the time for. It was a home for unwed mothers.
What was your emotional state like during that pregnancy?
Well, pretty chaotic.
Okay.
I had a lot of breaking down and weeping, and it was. But the home. When I got to the home, here there were all these other girls that were going to give their babies up for adoption too. Many of them, not many were going to keep them. There were some, and so we were able to share our emotions and share our lives together at that time. And actually, we became friends, and so there was a minor support in that at the time. But as I said, this was 1962, and it was a very different world at that time.
So you said they referred you to a social worker.
Yeah,
who came out and talked to you.
Right.
And
they were anxious to have the babies.
Okay.
Because they needed adopted. They had a lot of adoptive parents that were waiting for children, and they took the background of my background and the background of the father, and and they determined that and they said, yeah, well, your baby is probably going to be fairly intelligent, so we're looking forward to this. And it was almost like I thought in the back of my head, I really thought that if I didn't give up the child for adoption, that my care would not be taken care of. I thought, I'd have to pay for this somehow, or pay them
for
back.
Being at the
home. Yeah, which was a 4-month period at the time.
So
and
you
then
felt
the
some pressure.
Yeah. I mean, I just, as I said, I really didn't think that there was any other way.
Okay. Did the father of the child?
And there wasn't any chance. Yeah, he knew about it, but there wasn't any chance for us to, to be together, to get married or anything. He had been previously married, and he was, going through a divorce, and so, there possibility.
But what kind of emotional support did he give you? I mean, did
Oh,
he-
not very much.
Okay, so
Not very much.
so that was an added pressure for you too.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that was the added pressure, and
Okay. So the social worker talked to you. They already had a family selected. Did they allow you to be a part of that family selection process?
no, no,
Okay.
not at all. In
Okay.
fact, I didn't. After he was born in September, and I didn't sign the final papers. And he was in foster care during that time. I did get to see him in the foster care, but they. I don't know if it was just in my mind that this is going to be there was a deadline that I had to I had to sign those papers. I really didn't know anything about foster care or anything at the time. I mean, it's just it was
Totally
kind of
unknown.
a walk in the dark. And and now that I look back at it, I think, wow, I was very ill informed,
Right, and
And
uninformed, basically.
uninformed, yeah.
And I think that happens a lot of times with, unfortunately, when you're dealing with some aspects of social services, there's a goal in mind, and they don't really see you as a part of the process. It's like, okay, you're a means to the end where we're to get to. So basically, it's some ways that you were just sort of like an incubator
Yeah,
for,
it was.
for this child.
Yeah, I didn't have more than 2 or 3 consultations with the social worker.
So was there someone there with you when you gave birth?
Yes,
Okay.
this home employed their own nurses. They actually had a delivery room right at the home.
Okay.
I mean, this Salvation Army home was a miracle.
Wow.
Okay. We got to go to church and everything.
Okay.
Wow. And so there was it was actually. And I did have a relationship with a social worker at the home.
Okay.
But
so there was a social worker there when you delivered.
Yeah, I think so. But as I said, they had their own nursing staff and doctors that were connected to a hospital. And they are the ones that were there at the birth. So.
So did you get to see your baby?
I actually took care of him for 10 days before the social worker. I guess I need to say that the social worker was in another county in another city, and I was in a home actually 250 miles apart. So they came, the social worker from the county of where I had talked to the social worker. She came and she picked up my son 10 days after he was born. So I was in the care of, and then they took him to a foster home.
Were you aware that it was going to be a foster home at that point?
Yes, yeah. They told me that he would be placed in a foster home until I signed the papers, and it was about 3 months before I broke down, I guess, and finally signed the papers.
At least they didn't force you.
No,
to
they
do them
didn't. They didn't
immediately.
force me to. They didn't force me at all. But it was just that. They encouraged me, and I didn't know any other.
Way to go. It's interesting because I used to be an adoption social worker, and I've worked with birth parents who placed their children, and of course this was in the 80s. By then, just 20-something years later, but one, they were given the option of seeing the child or not, once they had given birth, because for some people, making that initial attachment or bond just makes it even worse for them. For some, they want to have that so that they can relish that and just really feel like that there's that spiritual connection with that child, to know that they're loved, and just to be able to have some closure. If the adoptive parent was stable enough emotionally to do that, unless they've really gotten a lot of support and counseling, sometimes they're not able to do that. So I'm just looking at the difference in the time,
Right.
you know, of what was going on in social services, and also what I'm looking at that's happening now in terms of people being a part of the selection process, which I did allow for the families. And I think it also makes a difference if you're working with a county agency or a private agency as well. So that's something different. So
They did ask me my choices in a sense, and you know, and at the time I was not a Christian, and so I didn't, you know, I didn't determine that the child needed to be raised in a Christian family. In fact, I said, you know, if you want to put him in a Jewish family, that's fine with me. Because I figured, well, they at that time they had they were usually well-off families, and so I thought, well, it'd be well taken care of, you know. So, and that it didn't happen that way, but anyway.
So it was 3 months later. How long did you remain at the
I
home?
only was there. I was actually left the home the day after the social worker came.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was there. You know, no, I mean, I was there 4 months total.
Okay. But after the birth, you
And
were
after
just
the
there
birth,
10
yeah,
days.
10 days, and then I left, and then I actually came back to the city that
That you were.
where I had made the adoption,
Okay.
or
Initiated the adoption
initiated
process.
the adoption.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you recall what was going on with you emotionally during that time? It probably might have been a big blur.
Well, yeah, it was you know, very extremely painful. You know, I experienced the void right away, and actually, you know, I really had a downhill slide.
Did you go through the depression?
Yeah,
In addition to the
I went
hormones,
through.
it was
Yeah,
the
I actually
postpartum
went through
plus
the
that
postpartum
separation.
depression and depression. I
Separation.
I started drinking, you know, more when I, you know, I did end up going back to school eventually, but I was working and going back to school. I never did go back to. Well, I went to my parents' home, you know, to visit, but I never ended up going back to live.
So
with
how
them.
long did that depression last, and how long did it take you just to sort of relive your life?
Well, probably. I don't know. I really don't know. I would say probably a couple of years.
Okay, okay. And
Before
at
I
this point,
was-
the only people you shared it with were the people you were dealing with and your brother.
Yeah, and then there were a few others after that.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
and I took up a relationship with the father even after that. You know,
Okay.
as friends, and we really were just friends. But you know, I did know him, and it was just, you know, we didn't talk about it. It was, you know, it was basically over. You know, and
Close that chapter and
that chapter
move on with life.
you know, started to be closed. You know.
Were you ever able to block it out at any point?
No.
No. Okay. So when would you be reminded of it the most? I know anniversaries or birthdays are usually.
Oh yeah, more than that. I mean, just little inklings and nudges every now and then, and
What about seeing other children?
and children, yeah, seeing children, babies. And oh, I wonder how old he is now, you know, and that. Yeah, it was probably pretty frequent.
Okay.
I can't. You know, it's you kind of put all those kind of emotions into a box and
Put the lid on it.
and put the lid on it, and but it was probably pretty frequent. You know, it could be daily. You know, that I
What helped you to cope? I know at one point you said you were drinking pretty heavily.
Yeah, I did drink for a while, and well, at that point in my life, I was really searching for God. But I didn't know how to find him.
And your father was a minister.
And my father was a minister, yeah. But I didn't know how to find him.
Wow.
so that's a little bit later. If you went, after, and then I traveled. From New York to Los Angeles. I became fairly career-minded. I was going to get a job, go to finish school finally, and have some career. Actually, that experience made me go into later on go into social work.
Okay.
At least that was my major.
Okay. Okay.
And I did a little bit of social work. I was actually an eligibility worker in Watts in 1965, 67.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That was the
A few
time.
years later. Yeah. Wasn't it 66? Yeah, 66, 67, somewhere in there.
Okay.
It's been so many years ago.
As time flies.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you had your next child? You got married somewhere in between.
Okay, I
there.
got married in '66, and
That's 4 years later.
And 4 years later, and our first daughter was born in '68.
Okay.
So 2 years after that.
Okay. So that was 6 years
Mhm.
later that you became pregnant again.
And
How did that pregnancy bring up any other?
oh, it actually, there was a healing that happens, and when you have, your own baby that you can keep, and yeah, that was, there was quite a bit of healing, but at the same time, it wasn't a boy, it was a girl, and I was really happy it was a girl because. In my husband's family, they have so many boys, and she was very blessed because she was one of the first girls born, and so we did. There was healing did come, but still there's that empty spot that never goes away,
Now, later on, we're actually going to talk with your husband. At what point did you tell him?
Well, he actually knew before we got married.
Okay, so that conversation came up. So you were open.
Oh
with
yeah,
him.
I was open with him, and I told him what had happened.
Were you nervous about telling him that?
Oh, I'm sure I was. Yeah.
Okay, but you don't remember.
I think I did pick an opportune time, to tell him.
What was his response?
But he was very understanding, even from I never sensed any jealousy or
judgment.
He was very understanding about it, and it didn't seem to make a difference to him. So, and we were very honest with each other about our past lives anyway. And I mean, we needed to be. We really needed to be because it was, we were kind of pre-hippies and ex-beats, and we were back in that era.
Is the same thing as beatniks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was too early to be a hippie, so we did end up in that vein.
Yeah, that's still late 60s.
Yeah, late 60s. And in fact, I'm even in the Monterey Pop Festival film. Just about 3 seconds of it.
That's funny.
Yeah,
that's funny.
And
And this is really funny for those of you who don't know yet. Some of you may recognize Mary, and then when we introduce her husband, she and her husband are now co-pastors of a ministry here in Vallejo. So that's what makes it even funnier.
Yeah.
Now, were you and your husband saved when you got married?
No, we weren't. No,
Okay.
and my father married us in a church, and we had a big church wedding, but we were not, and that was for his parents and my parents. But no, we weren't. We were not believers, and that didn't happen until we were separated.
Okay. After how many years?
After let's see, that was in 1971, so that was 5 years, and we were separated 1 year, and in that year is the year that I received Jesus as my Lord.
Okay.
And that changed my whole life. And that's when I started praying for my son.
Wow.
At that point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're actually going to come back and share with Mary, as well as her husband, the miracle that has transpired in her life as a result of giving her life to the Lord and praying for this child that she had placed many years before, and the awesome story that she and her husband has to share. So come back and join us, and we look forward to sharing this wonderful testimony with you. And if you're a birth parent who perhaps has placed a child for adoption and you're still struggling emotionally with that choice, or there's someone that you may not have told that you just want to, be able to just have your heart open and you're not sure how to do it, just stay tuned and we'll be back next time. God bless. Bye-bye.
Weeping for her children. Mothers are weeping. Mothers cry.